comment will be via telephone only. To speak a public comment, call 888-788-0099. Enter meeting ID 954-3473-9065. This information is available on the published agenda and the public notices section of the city's website, and broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 19, AT&T Channel 99, and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. Aaron, will you read the land heritage statement?
Yes. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals.
Thanks, Aaron. Would you mind doing the roll call?
Yes. Vice Chair Brown? Absent for now. Council Member Cornell?
Here, Ward 5, Ann Arbor.
Chairperson Curtis?
Here, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Dale? She let me know she would not be here this evening. Commissioner Graham?
Here.
Councilmember Malik?
Here, calling from Ann Arbor's 2nd Ward.
Commissioner Marson?
I'm here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Mursky?
Here at my home in Ann Arbor in Ward 2.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Looks like Commissioner Nedrich is coming in. Commissioner Peterswood? Let me know he would not be here this evening. Commissioner Smith?
Here in Ann Arbor.
And Commissioner Wahing? Absent. And hello, Commissioner Nedrich.
Hi, apologies for my lateness.
No problem. And here comes Vice Chair Brown. Okay, that is a quorum.
Thank you. So does anybody want to make changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So seconded by, okay, Rita. Good. Is there all in favor of the approval of the agenda? Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, does anybody want to make changes to the minutes from last month's meeting? Is there a motion to approve last month's meeting minutes?
Removed.
And seconded by Steve will be second. All in favor of the approval of the minutes, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Approval. It's approved. Next item of business is public comment. This is an opportunity for people to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 888-788-0099. Enter meeting ID 954-3473-9065. To raise your hand, press 9. To unmute, press *6. City staff will select callers who have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. When speaking, please move to a quiet area, state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. There may be a delay up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Aaron, you mentioned we had one caller.
Yes, caller 464.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Thanks. Yeah, my name is Linda Brower, 421 3rd Street. I was very happy to see the draft resolution supporting inclusion of natural features protections into the city's new comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, which, as you know, is in process of development now and likely to be finalized towards the end of this year, will embody land use principles and guide land use decisions for years to come in Ann Arbor. I consider it essential that the comprehensive plan include robust protections for natural features. Protection of natural features has been an Ann Arbor community value for as long as I've been here, going on 40 years. The last and most recent comprehensive plan, formerly known as the master plan, contains sections speaking eloquently about the importance of preserving green open space, forest remnants, heritage trees, and our tree canopy in general, and maintaining the integrity of our wetlands and the many creeks that feed into the Huron River. I have not seen as yet much emphasis on natural features protections in the current discussions and planning surrounded the currently being revised comprehensive plan. And there's no better body than you guys, the Environmental Commission, to bring this to the attention of the planners and commissioners and others who are developing the comprehensive plan. So I urge you to recommend such protections to the Planning Commission and Council and planning staff in the strongest possible terms. You guys have the credibility to make that recommendation because of your expertise in environmental issues. So I encourage you to use your leverage. And then I have one specific request for inclusion in your recommendations. The draft resolution mentions protection of wetlands, watercourses, but there is no mention specifically of floodplains. And with the increased infill development and effort to increase density citywide, protecting the open floodplains that remain under city ownership should be of the highest priority. This was the recommendation of our longtime and recently retired, highly credentialed floodplain manager, Jerry Hancock. As you know, the city is purchasing vacant lots in the floodplain to prevent others from, buying them and building so that they can stay open. And they're even buying some lots in the floodplain with modest homes and demolishing the homes in order to expand the areas of unobstructed floodplain. I can't remember which creek sheds those kind of purchases were happening in, but I do know that the city owns significant acreage in many floodplains, notably in the Allen Creek floodplain. And I urge the Environmental Commission to urge the city to adopt a policy of no further construction of any type on the remaining city-owned parcels located in the floodplain. These should remain open green space, planted with native species to serve as green infrastructure. Floodplains serve a natural purpose, which is even more important in our era of increased precipitation brought on by rapid climate change. Reducing the potential impact of floods is a matter of public health and safety, as well as environmental responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You. Color 411.
Commissioner Curtis, members of the commission, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. My name is James DeMore, and I am a longtime resident of the city as well. I work with a previous speaker, Linda Brower, and working on the Allens Creek task force, and I concur with her opinion regarding parcel development along the Allens Creek Greenway. But the main reason why I called you, I speak to you as a former member of both the Parks Commission and as a city planning commissioner. And I have, what I have to say about this issue is, I think this ordinance before you change that you're working on is long, long overdue. I was sort of surprised when a previous iteration was delayed in the first place at the request of the Sustainability Office and the Planning Commission. We really need this element in our development of a comprehensive plan. I note that City Council Member Dish a couple nights ago mentioned a certain parcel with a large number of trees, as saying that the parcel wanted to be developed. Did anyone ask the trees that are there? We still have a number of steep slopes and natural feature areas that need greater protection, as Ms. McBrower had noted, also the floodplain issue. I note that my time, planning parcels are developed without consideration to greater natural systems around them. They're analyzed in isolation by planning department and commission. Sometimes, as I said, not taking the greater issue. I have to say, let's bring natural features protection hand in hand with sustainability initiatives. We cannot solve the climate crisis without protecting natural systems. I'm sorry if I'm a little eloquent. I'm reading my chicken scratchings that I carved at this last minute. But I know that each of you are well qualified and you have great interest in coming forth a good plan. And I look forward to what you produce and I support your efforts. Thank you for what you do and good evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is all the raised hands for now.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on. We don't have any old business, so let's move to new business, which is the resolution that was just being talked about. Rita, do you want to walk us through it? And Aaron, will you share it on the screen?
Yes.
I'll give a short introduction. The goal of this resolution that's being offered by the Biodiversity Work Group of the Environmental Commission is to acknowledge biodiversity as essential for the future health of the Ann Arbor community. We know that we're affected by the climate crisis. We know that in addition to climate change, land use planning will change our immediate surroundings. We've pulled together some ideas in this resolution from local planning efforts as well as international thoughts about including biodiversity in urban settings. And that seems to be the direction that we're going, more urbanization. Benefits to humans are intertwined with ecological health. We are part of our system. As Ann Arbor changes, we strongly believe, I think I'm speaking correctly for the Biodiversity Work Group, we strongly believe that we must work to implement actions that integrate natural systems that will result in measurable gains in biodiversity that will ultimately be more efficient and effective to address our overall community health and welfare as we're part of this system. So we're proposing support for ongoing processes to be included with city planning efforts for the comprehensive plan and the A20 plan, as well as existing protections that are involved in the historic districts in the city. So that's my intro, and I guess it would help me to know if the commissioners have had a chance to review the document and to understand how closely we need to follow it and track as we discussed tonight. Is there, could we have like a show of hands if you at least had a chance to read it? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 4. Okay, looks like we might need a little bit of review. So I'll kind of skim. First, we call out the responsibility of the Environmental Commission itself as a body. Because we are responsible to advise council on ways to protect and enhance our air, water, land, and public health. And we want to help set those goals for the city. We know that the natural features plan that exists now has definitions, and we want to retain those for our reference and use as we go forward. How we do that in the comprehensive plan is something that we want to make sure that is worked out. And so what we want to acknowledge is that the planning for the comprehensive plan, I'm down to the one that has multiple bullet points associated, has already acknowledged some aspects of green infrastructure, environmental protection, promoting balance between natural and human systems, which I think is really important. And in that the balance, again, is reflected not only in the natural features protection, but also in reducing carbon emissions. They're intertwined. So carbon emission reduction is not just about burning fewer fossil fuels, but it's also retaining natural features that help us to store carbon, excess carbon that's being emitted, and to give us oxygen. We had a public feedback. Let me see. Yeah, just in the review for the comprehensive plan, there was an indication of, again, of the need for balance between natural features and biodiversity, and the developed system, and calling out preserving natural features. And again, once more in looking at public support for natural features. We feel that this is essential. So we have quite a lot of sort of our preamble, the whereases that introduce the features that we feel are really important about how we live in our ecosystem. It's a natural system that can help us. It's there to serve purposes. So a couple of our callers indicated that, for example, the floodplains serve a purpose and can help us to avoid what could be excess flooding in the future if we keep intact ecosystems. We need those ecosystems or life just vanishes, essentially. And we'll work even harder. We'll be impoverished, I would say, from a natural perspective, maybe even from a food system perspective. So we're looking again for how we acknowledge and support what natural systems do. They support diversity of species, and we want to avoid that decline. I'm just going to go through these multiple whereases. There are quite a few. And we'll probably ultimately, and we welcome your input today and in the next month, for how to reduce how to consolidate these, make them more efficient as statements. But we want to make a strong statement. And the point is that we know that we have some risks in our climate, and we know that we should be able to do better. And we're lucky that we have some processes going forward that are looking at the future. We just think that we can do them better when we incorporate the natural systems that we have. So I'm going to buzz through these. We want to acknowledge all those natural features down to the last one, including the natural forest fragments, landmark and heritage trees, wetlands and watercourses, and floodplains. We want to, now I'd like to move in. Actually, I guess I should ask before moving forward. Are there any questions, comments, or suggestions about the preamble, what I call the preamble to our actual resolutions, where we want to go with dealing with natural features? I'd like to hear a few comments from our group. Steve, hi.
Hi, everybody. I had a few thoughts about this. I'm recalling the city's proposal for what they call a tree line. You know, and that you have phase one, which goes between, I believe, Washington Street and the river. And that's which is the most, last I looked, it seemed to be the most natural features friendly of the three legs that were proposed for the tree line. And the thing is that that would provide, there's a lot of building going on downtown. And so, you know, 15 minutes in nature can lower your blood pressure and other things. So hopefully, and I've been thinking about the open space issues as well, you know, near downtown. And West Park seems to be ideally situated for that. So I was wondering if the Natural Features Group has thought about having a corridor, like a non-vehicular corridor, short corridor between the tree line and downtown and West Park.
I can say that we haven't talked about that specifically, Steve, but we have talked about natural features as being integrated with the entire city, you know, so we have residential areas, we have streetscapes, we have parks, and we know that the university is part of our system as well. So we're kind of thinking of it as an overall ecosystem, as opposed to identified as one discrete area. So yes to what you say, but I would say I'd like it to be even more. You know, that considerations of biodiversity get included with developments as they move forward, so that we have, as residents, visitors, exposure to nature wherever we walk. Not that it has to be all green space necessarily, but there is a benefit to having components of nature that function near us, that we can see and touch. And so I wouldn't want to have parks be exclusive as the features of natural systems. That's my opinion.
Rita, can I add a comment on that?
Please do.
So maybe just building off of what Steve and you were saying, we could look at a nature corridor in different ways. You know, that's a blend of public and private spaces, because some private residential yards would count as part of a nature corridor, depending on the trees and the plants they have. And that could be something of beneficial from a biodiversity standpoint.
Absolutely. That is a really good way to describe it. And thanks. Sarah.
Rita, thank you for this resolution. It's just beautifully written, and the way that you spoke about this was so eloquent, so thank you. I was really interested in the part you talked about metrics to measure biodiversity, and that is such a big issue. I was actually just at a conference last year, at the end of the year, that there was a whole session on measuring biodiversity and what types of metrics to use. And it's really, there's a lot of policy debate about that right now, even on a global scale. So, I think that is, a really important step if we are going to be able to track the impact of different actions the city's taken. We need to establish good metrics. So I like that you have that in there. I was wondering generally, do you know the timeline for the comprehensive plan? Like, have we seen a draft, and do we know, is this resolution adverse to what's in that plan, or is this just to kind of throw it out there so the city makes sure that it's in the plan?
Both.
Yeah, I would say, thanks, Chris. I would agree that it is sort of both. We want to make sure that natural features are mentioned. And so we called out points where it has been addressed in at least discussions of the comprehensive plan, but we haven't seen a draft yet. And that is anticipated to come in the next couple of months, I believe. And I saw a calendar of the process recently, and this proposal, our recommendations should be possible to include in it. And so we are intending to work toward that goal. And your comment on metrics, yes. And I can't say that I am an expert in those kinds of metrics. It's clearly something that's quite broad, and we'd have to determine what are the right things. And ideally, from my perspective, this would be something that would incorporate input from multiple departments in the city, so that we'd have, because I know we have expertise, and so we should use what we have, and in a way that can be measured right here.
It's very controversial. So some people think you should look at overall like ecosystem services provided and not worry so much about individual species. And some people think you really need to look at diversity, and that's the metric. So it's just like this really hot debate. It's fun,
Yeah.
but yeah.
If you have recommendations, please pass them along.
I'll ask the experts and let you know where they're leaning.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
John Mirsky.
Thank you. Full transparency here. I'm a member of the biodiversity group, so I had a hand in the drafting of this resolution. I just like to make a few comments. I'll speak for myself, but I think many on the working group feel the same way. To state the obvious, I think we all know, but maybe not everybody in the community knows, that we not only have a climate crisis, we do have a biodiversity crisis. I mean, there's lots and lots of studies, more and more all the time coming out, showing dramatic declines in the number of insects, the biomass of mammals. I mean, you can just go on and on down the list. There was just recently a study published in Nature within the last 10 days or so, indicating that butterfly populations have decreased dramatically just in the last 20 years, not over the last 100 years or something like that. So we have two crises that we have to take into consideration. In that recognizing both of those, I think most, if not all of us, also recognize that the city needs more housing, and it needs more affordable housing, and it needs that housing to be sustainable housing. And as outlined in the 820 plan, we also recognize that vehicle miles traveled have to be reduced. And that's the only way. Transportation emissions are 1/3 plus of total emissions, and they're the one segment of emissions that are growing. So we recognize the context in which we're operating in. If you look at the resolution, it's not prescriptive. It's not saying yet, you have to measure this or you have to do that. It's not saying we have to do this or that with the tree line trail or anything else, but we're saying that natural features and its ecosystem services really needs to be considered as a part of the comprehensive plan. And our view is, up until now, there has not been enough recognition of that in the public comment, as well as in comments from Planning Commission and the advisory group that's working on this, et cetera. So what we're trying to do is get this as a part of the discussion and this to be recognized in the comprehensive plan. And then after that, we can become a little bit more defined and prescriptive. Lastly, I'd like to say, we really, well, two more things. We're not trying to prevent development. We're trying to steer development to the areas that are going to have the lowest impact. Want to steer it to vacant parking lots. We want to steer it to strip mall areas and things like that. And that we're not also saying you can't develop in areas where there are natural features. At least this is, we're not saying this directly in here, but I think this is our intent. We're not saying to anyone, you can't develop in an area where there are natural features or where some may be negatively impacted. But what we'd like to see is that those be mitigated. And as I said, that pushes people to doing development where it really makes sense. And frankly, where it's going to have the highest transit impact, where you're going to have transit-oriented development as opposed to putting it in residential areas. So we want everyone to realize what our motives are here. We're not NIMBYs. We're really trying to do the right thing. And let's see, I wanted to say one more thing. I had some notes here. Just one other thing. And Rita touched on this very briefly, but I want to mention that some of this discussion was inspired by the fact that we recognize that the UK has passed legislation requiring that larger scale development, all larger scale development within the UK has to actually increase biodiversity. So we haven't dug into real detail on this, and it's obviously there's metrics involved and things like that. But the spirit of that law is that, again, development is desired and needed. Change is a good thing if it's done in the right way. And the right way is you do it in such a way that you preserve natural features, you enhance biodiversity, and that is what is really behind the thinking and the purpose of elevating this for discussion in this whole effort to update our comprehensive plan. Thanks for the opportunity to share those comments.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. That was great. And I agree with what you said, but I'd like to add something, and that is that it's not just VMT, vehicle miles traveled, but also reduction of carbon emissions related to the buildings themselves, which currently a lot of them use fossil fuels. And if we can reduce the fossil fuel use in buildings, we may even reduce emissions greater than the transportation miles, whatever the right way is to say that. Any other comments right now? So we did the tee up. Okay. And absolutely, John, you were right on. I was just going to say that we were not attempting to be prescriptive. We want to set this as a framework so that we have a way to look at what we're doing in the future. And that sees our natural world as an ally that we need to work with, as kind of like, sorry to anthropomorphize that, but anyway, that's my point, is work with nature. And so with that, I would like to get into our results. Oops, I see another hand. Chris Graham.
I'll put my hand down until you're done, Rita.
Okay, all right. Well,
sorry.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we all know that what we're going to be talking about is some suggestions for the comprehensive plan to be developed, and to make sure that we start, that as we move forward, that what we're talking about is included in this very important A20 plan that I think would benefit from having the scope to include natural features, again, to be developed, and to have us work together in those planning things. So I think I'll stop there. Just, Chris, if you want to make your comment, because I was just going to go into the results steps.
More like 30 years ago, when I first started to work on natural features, we didn't call them that then. I wondered what Ann Arbor was like before Europeans came here. What, in other words, the question, answering the question, what is native? Europeans came to Ann Arbor in 1824. And prior to that, the exact location that was the original plat of Ann's Arbor, A-R-B-O-U-R, was a grove of very large bur oaks, widely spaced, with a 300 species count prairie growing underneath it. It was a spectacular park-like setting, but all native. The Indians who camped there off and on grew food there. They did their families there. It was one of the many Indian camps across southern Michigan. They would migrate between them over the years. They used fire to burn their prairie, didn't hurt the trees, but very much enriched the species count in the herbaceous flora. Some of the work we've been doing with NAP is trying to restore some of those original ecosystem elements. In any case, it gives us a base map with which to say, okay, what did we have here? What is our natural heritage? And by definition, those very healthy ecosystems, that great stewardship that the Indians passed on to us, is an expression of the optimum cover for our land in Ann Arbor. We read every meeting in the city, last phrase of which says, knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us. We have this statement, we don't do anything about it. I would submit to you that if we did a great job of including natural features in every step of development across our city, parks and private lands and university. They're very excited about this too. We would be doing something important to recognize the heritage that 10,000 years of Indian habitation here left us. I personally am very afraid of the current comprehensive plan. I think it's undemocratically set up. I think it should be set up and managed with the cooperation and full knowledge of each neighborhood. I think it should have a very healthy dose of design management rather than doing away with the design review board. I know it didn't have much effect because they never gave it any teeth. We ought to really enhance it and really work to develop this city in a way that's poetic, that's alive, that's exciting, that's very conservative about our old trees. Most of you don't know that our original natural features regulations amended parts of the code to try to protect wetlands, woodlands, landmark trees, floodplains, waterways, steep slopes. It applies only to those development projects in Ann Arbor that require a site plan approval process, which meant large parcels of land. Back in the late 80s, people were very upset because we had almost wall-to-wall clear cutting of the large parcels of land to develop housing, mostly. Wetlands were filled, all the trees were cut down, all the soil was disturbed, the land was made flat and clear. And most important in that whole process was the loss of trees. So we established these regulations with 100% support of the council back then, 100% support of the planning commission. And the process has worked extraordinarily well over the years to minimize. The code actually said, you'll present plans to the city that persuades them you are minimizing the damage to natural features on your property. And if you want to take trees, you want to take a piece of a wetland, you need to mitigate via some sort of fee or replacement of the things you've taken, the damage you've caused. This has been very successful. It ended years of terrible controversies about developments in the city. But the key fact that most people don't know, it never applied to existing residential neighborhoods or any project in them. Anything that never required a site plan process through the Planning Commission and the Planning Department was not and is not regulated. Now we are talking about doing away with all of R1 and R2 housing in the city. We are talking about allowing things like the George, a big apartment building down on Packard, to be built in an R1 neighborhood if someone can assemble 2 or 3 lots together. And we're talking about cutting setback distances to about half what they are. We're talking about these things happening by right, no discussion if it fits the code. We're talking about buildings as much as 48 feet tall in an R1 neighborhood. What the net result of that will be without the kind of planning process that really brings great beauty to our city rather than buildings galore is almost no trees left. This will not be Tree City. So this is what we're afraid of. This is why we're doing this resolution here. We've seen almost no sign that natural features matter anymore in Ann Arbor. Some of the neighborhoods are beginning to wake up. They're beginning to talk about a tree ordinance. We have one, we just don't apply it where we need to right now, given what's coming. So we should be a biophilic city. Washington, D.C.'s one. San Francisco's one. Singapore is the world's most famous one. They love to say, we brought the jungle and its water into our city. We didn't take the city and place it on the jungle. And that place is really exciting if you like anything green. Last thing I'll say, there was an astronaut yesterday or the day before, fan of those folks coming back from the space station. He said the thing that's been most important to me over the last couple of years, other than getting back into shape, which I guess takes a while, I really love to sit out in my backyard and see green. The plants, the birds, my fountain, my swimming pool. This is the most important thing to me after being up there. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so with that, I want to move into talking about the results. And we tried to keep them simple so that we can move forward with the Planning Commission, the Planning Department, the other city staff groups that will help to move forward in the direction that we've discussed and that Chris gave a good summary about. So what we want to do is say that the comprehensive plan must incorporate measures to protect, conserve, restore, enhance, and manage natural features, and recognize that the value of those features to our health as a whole, all species. We want the existing natural features protections, as they are stated in the current UDC, to be a baseline, and not to disappear, but to be available to be used as we move forward in the future. And we've got a really strong statement in our 1B about having higher mitigation requirements for taking of large old trees, freestanding or otherwise in a native forest fragment, and to protect native soils from destruction, compaction, and extend natural features to all areas of the city. So I acknowledge that there are some areas of controversy in that particular resolved clause. We want to have the Living Ann Arbor 820 carbon neutrality plan prioritize natural features, sustainability, along with other strategies that are being used so that we can enhance that plan. Because I think that's an area where there is some opportunity for inclusion of natural features. So we want to work together collaboratively to develop some methods to assess and track gain or loss of biodiversity so that we have a sense of where we are over time. Maybe we'll make a change that doesn't show a direction of natural features that we'd like to see, and we'd like to understand what could be changed. So there's that. We didn't call out specific city staff in the 2A section because we think that there will be different departments that may be involved. And we want to see more cross-department integration to support natural features. And number 3, we know that the city currently has protection of natural features that are in historic districts. Those protections are related to features that were in place historically, and at this point, it is required that permission be granted to remove, say, large old trees on a historic district property. We think that that information is not well known or understood across the city, and feel that it would be good to improve communication about that to both residents, maybe realtors, and contractors, so they know the requirements. And really, the intent here is to show the value and the reason for protecting those natural features. Some of those trees in historic districts may be among those that are remaining after our European settlement of the area, for example. And the last is that we want to work with the Office of Sustainability and Innovation to develop some natural features-based complementary actions to work with that team on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and sustaining our local ecosystems. Those are definitely to be determined. And since we are not intending to be prescriptive, we are looking for input from professionals to help us with developing measurements and thoughts on how to do this efficiently and effectively in the future. So that's my rough review of where we're going with the resolution. Okay, Brooks.
Yes, can we go back to paragraph 1B?
Sure.
I'd like to suggest that we reword that section to be more in line with what Commissioner Mirsky talked about, the UK requirements, or the spirit of the UK requirements of increasing biodiversity when we do development. We know that when Brett Leonard came to the Environmental Commission last year, he stated he thought that the current level of environmental protection, natural features protection, was appropriate for Ann Arbor, and he was not going to support any additional requirements on residential properties. We know that City Council as a whole is very pro-development, and this statement, when we start talking about additional higher mitigation requirements, can be considered not pro-development. And so I think that would make it hard to get through. And I would hate to lose the benefits from the rest of the parts of this resolution because of that one paragraph. And I think we can, if we focus on biodiversity, I think we can get a lot of the benefits that we want. As Commissioner Mirsky said, we need, as a city, we need more development of housing. We need higher density housing. But higher density housing doesn't mean paving Ann Arbor. That's not the intent. Development and biodiversity can and should be done together. If we work at it together and be creative, I think we can get both of them, but I don't think 1B, the way it's worded, would allow that option. So I think we need to do something different there.
Thank you.
The rub comes about trees, Brooks, and it comes about trees in not just R1 or R2, R1 A or B neighborhoods. It comes even in R2 neighborhoods in Burns Park, where trees that are 60, 70, 80, 90 years old disappear. Those lots, in order to build at the density they've already upzoned, is so significant that they completely clear cut these lots to build not just one duplex, but two, one behind the other. So we need a process that allows us to have these discussions. I don't know where they all come out on any given site, but it's not just about, I've been saying for a number of years, one of the biggest troubles on residential properties in the city without any regulation whatsoever is the unintended loss of old trees. A lot of contractors, most of them, go on private residential properties to do projects. They drive on the roots of the trees that the owner of the house expects will be saved. They're dead 3 or 4 years later, especially if they're old oaks. We need some sort of regulation on residential properties, and the real bone on those, apart from losing open space and gardens, will be the loss of old trees. And I agree with you, this is difficult, and maybe there's a way to word it better, but I don't want us to back away from the argument we have to have.
Thanks, Chris. John Mirsky?
Two points. My understanding, this is a first reading, and that we will have an opportunity to take into account everybody's input here, take it back into the working group and tweak this. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, good. So I think what we're hearing between Brooks' comments, mine, Christopher's, and others is that these are things that we need to work on in terms of shades of gray. And it's something that obviously I think we can come to a consensus on, certainly within the working group and hopefully within the commission. My second is a request, and that is I saw some, I'll call it subtle nodding and shaking of heads between our two council members. And I'm hopeful that they might be willing to share their thoughts on the resolution, where they sense either personally or judging the overall thinking of council and the planning commission and those working on this, what they think might resonate and what they think maybe needs to be reconsidered or reevaluated. So that's a request that I have. No further comment.
Thanks. Steve.
Yeah, thanks, John. I support your comment, but also nobody picked up on this on my earlier comment, it seemed, but I want to emphasize that this is also a quality of life issue for the residents that are living in these high rises. You know, the ability to easily access natural areas without getting into their car and driving 10 miles or across town would be an amenity that I think anybody, like not even the astronauts, would. I mean, certainly the astronauts returning would agree to, but anybody who's lived in a high-rise apartment building like I have would appreciate having ready access by foot, by walking, or biking to a natural area. So I think I would suggest that you add a whereas clause that includes that as a value, a proven value, by the way, for the health and for the health of residents living in these more dense housings, in denser housing. Now, and that's not to detract anything from biodiversity, but in support of it. That's all. That's all I had to say.
Thanks, Steve. Aaron, I think we're talking in a way that doesn't require a view of the resolution unless someone has a need for that. Could we just go to the big screen of all of us? Thanks. Other comments? Sarah.
Yeah, I just had like one random thought after this discussion of residential properties and big trees. Have we looked at like cost and energy savings of having big trees in the summer since you're not going to be using your AC as much? Like, could that be another argument or consideration, I should say? I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
I think yes, because, and to me, that would be a great area to have the Office of Sustainability assist with developing that kind of an assessment. It might be a metric, I don't know. But yeah, I would think so. Yeah. Olivia.
Hi, thanks for this great discussion, everyone. I just want to play devil's advocate for a second and ask whether we think, allowing more high density, development in the city, not that any of these stances are like anti-development, but these higher density residential developments, I think in a lot of cases allow people to more affordably move into areas that have greater access to green space.
Could you explain that a little bit more? Because we're talking about including, so maybe I need to understand a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree with the inclusion of it. That is just kind of a devil's advocate question. Just like more access to the green spaces in this the downtown, city area, or the residential areas that, already have a lot of parks and access.
Let me see if I'm understanding. Are you saying more green spaces in the downtown?
Never mind. It's
No,
good.
please don't back off.
I think like the higher density, like I think this is what I'm trying to get at, like more walkable areas, higher density residential developments in more like walkable and accessible areas, like allows greater access to the green spaces that already exist.
Okay. Thank you. I see Anne Marsan.
Hi. Yeah, this has been a great discussion. I certainly am in support of a resolution of this kind. And I think I just wanted to follow on Commissioner Smith's comment. I think one of the things about Ann Arbor is that for a city our size, we actually have a substantial amount of parkland. And I think it's one of the reasons, not the only one certainly, but one of the reasons why there's a lot of demand to live within the city of Ann Arbor is access to that kind of amenity. And therefore, in order for Ann Arbor to be affordable, denser housing is one way in order to achieve that, so that more people have access to the great green spaces that we have. And I certainly believe that we need to do what we can to protect those green spaces and make sure they're there for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. John Mirsky.
I'm hoping to engage a little bit with Commissioner Smith to tease out what I think she's getting at. So my daughter and son-in-law live in Seattle, and in Seattle, you see along major transit corridors a lot of faceless multi-story multifamily development. It's loud, it's noisy, it's not a very pleasant place to live. And my sense is that what we also want to provide is for people to have the opportunity to live in a residential neighborhood without being able to afford rent that's $5,000 a month, or a home that is frankly $1 million. If you're looking at Ann Arbor Hills, then you're not going to find any place that's over or that's under $1 million. And so I think that's, and maybe Commissioner Smith, you can comment on that. I think that's what you're getting at, is we shouldn't be forcing everyone into faceless places that are in horrible neighborhoods. Yes, they may be walkable neighborhoods in many regards, but they should also still be pleasant neighborhoods. And I hope that we're not setting up that dichotomy. And I think also what a lot of developers may find is that frankly, it's not particularly economical to go into Ann Arbor Woods and buy 3 homes that are $1 million to put up a multi-story, multi-family unit, because there's a lot of other places in the city where that can be done, where you don't have to buy properties and tear them down. So I don't know that these doomsday scenarios are really realistic. At the same time, I don't think also that the kind of solutions that we're seeing in some cities, where really people are being pushed into areas that really aren't desirable because they are loud and noisy and they don't have trees right outside their window. We don't want that either. So it's really difficult to thread that needle. I see that Councilmember Malik has raised his hand, but maybe Commissioner Smith, you can play catchball with me on that idea and maybe elaborate more, or tell me where I'm wrong and what else you were thinking, if you may.
Sure. Yeah, I think you and also Commissioner Marsden kind of more eloquently put what I was trying to say. that, you know, there's a very fine line you walk. I think of some of the developments on like the city boundaries. My office is at the corner of Maple and Miller, and there's all these developments going up that are just like barren land and, you know, very loud. The highway's right there. So yeah, I think there's a very fine balance to strike between like high density development within the city limits that have great access to all these parks and these green spaces, and, you know, biking trails and walking trails and, you know, lots of nature and bird noises instead of car noises, but also preserving those spaces and not, you know, developing them away. So yeah, it's very tough balance to strike, and I think this resolution will bring attention to preserving those spaces. And I think the way it's worded right now, you know, is not anti-development, and, you know, it still allows for those higher density developments.
Thank you. Councilmember Malik?
Hi, thanks for the presentation, Rita. I do want to underscore something you mentioned about the status of the comprehensive plan right now. You are exactly right. It's still being drafted. There, I think, maybe like a year and a half into gathering input on the plan, but they're still drafting it, and they being the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission will work on drafting the plan. It will still have to pass the Planning Commission after that. And then there will still be a 90-day public comment period on the plan before City Council even considers it. So I think the kind of target is to get it to City Council eventually, sometime maybe like fall or early winter, just for a general timeline. And then on the resolution itself, my perspective on it broadly, I think the focus on biodiversity is great and worthwhile overall. Being newer to both City Council as well as this commission, I'm not entirely sure if or how the comprehensive plan kind of takes these aspects into account. It does sound like Mr. Leonard from city staff, planning staff, has had a conversation with the commission already on this. I heard Chair Curtis right. So I would, I guess, kind of defer to him broadly on it at the moment. And then just to kind of touch on the, you know, I guess kind of environment versus development kind of topic we've been discussing. I'm also on the Greenbelt Commission, and of course, everybody here kind of knows the purpose of the Greenbelt to create kind of green space and open space outside the city. The city has kind of the city and the county and the whole region kind of has decided that that is a good thing to pursue for the city overall and the region. So, but of course, one of the trade-offs of doing that means development is kind of confined to the city. And even if, you know, Ann Arbor didn't grow, some things are out of our control, such as the university admitting more students and bringing new folks to the city. So development is needed in the city, and I do think there's a balance to be found in terms of allowing greater density within our city boundaries, as well as protecting, you know, some of our green spaces. So I think this is a really good discussion for the Environmental Commission overall. But I did have one question, if anybody would know. Do any other cities have kind of aspects like we're discussing tonight in their plans, or I guess maybe not in a comprehensive plan necessarily, but kind of like we're discussing, like, do any things like these already exist elsewhere? I know somebody earlier was mentioning like San Francisco and stuff, but I was just curious if other cities have tried kind of exactly what we're discussing here tonight, and if so, what the results have been, if anybody knows. Thanks.
I don't feel I can answer that last question, but I do want to make a comment about the Greenbelt, and that the funding does include funding for some purchase of green type properties within the city of Ann Arbor. It's a lesser amount than the whole, but that's something that perhaps could be used as part of this biodiversity process as we go forward. And again, I don't have a specific prescription in mind, but it's something to keep in mind because although we do have a generous amount of parks, if you count the number of parks, there are areas of the city that are less well supported by parkland. And so it's worthwhile to think about that in terms of balancing where we go with this, I think. So
1/3 of the proceeds of the green belt is allocated for purchases of parkland within the city.
that's right. That's right. And so I believe there's some funds that haven't been used yet. We really should think about that. Because now there's no better time than now, right? It's all going up in price in the future. Brooks.
So just to answer some of Councilmember Malik's questions, currently we have a separate natural features master plan that's a separate document than the comprehensive plan. The new comprehensive plan is going to incorporate everything or incorporate natural features. We don't know what's going to be in there. We haven't seen anything back out relative to natural features, nor have we any of the presentations we've seen coming from the steering committee say anything about natural features. And I think that's the uncertainty that's driving a lot of the discussion.
Steve.
Responding to Councilmember Malik's comment, my information's old, but the city of Minneapolis resolved to eliminate R1 zoning citywide almost 10 years ago. I don't know any more of the details, but I do know that elimination of R1 zoning, they also said that you could not build more than 2 or 3 units on any property that had formerly been zoned R1. So there wasn't any allowance for combining lots and building high rises. But they also encoded in their ordinances, transportation oriented zoning. There were TOCs, which the city recently did, but as I recall, city staff actually proposed that modification to city codes back in 2008. But it took a long time for the political will to develop for that rezoning. So I think it's a good thing to look through and see what other cities, especially in the upper Midwest, have accomplished over the last 10 years in terms of rezoning, to increase density. Because there are ways to balance community values better than I think what a lot of residents here think is coming. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Steve. For balance. Chris Graham.
You called me, Rita?
I did. I saw your hand up.
Dogs. Very good job. So thank you, Steve. Boulder and Madison both had very different kinds of planning processes to do this kind of upzoning. They're very democratic. They're very open and transparent. And they really were based on working with each neighborhood to decide how to design those neighborhoods to be really satisfying to everybody while there is more density. I get it, but I'm just really afraid we're sipping the real estate Kool-Aid tea here in Ann Arbor and not doing a balanced set of zoning changes. If I understand, I heard planning director say something last night. We don't really want to have public hearings for anything that satisfies the code. We don't want to even talk about it at the planning commission anymore. We'll just approve it. In my view, that's not the way, unless there's a whole lot of homework done on the planning staff, that's not the way that you get exciting, poetic, green, thriving neighborhoods. It's a way you ruin them. So I'm afraid, forgive me, I'm expressing my fear. I am not the only one. I'm going to meetings where there are many other people bothered about the trend lines of this discussion. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Rita. Taking my hand now.
Thank you. All right. I feel like we might be near the end. I'd like to invite Councilmember Cornell if you would like to add anything since you're here, and it's a good opportunity for us to include your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm also uncomfortable with the 1B. I'd like that to be a topic of conversation for the work group, just to see how we can acknowledge the fact that we do have a housing crisis, and having people commute into the city because they can't afford to live here is contributes to our environmental crisis. These two things are linked. And so I think when we talk about density, we do need to find that balance. We do. And I guess my other point is I think Councilmember Malik did a good job of describing the process, but I don't want that there to be I want to publicly acknowledge that this process for the comprehensive plan has involved a lot of input sessions, a lot of opportunities for the community to engage. And so I think city staff has done an excellent job with it. And to sort of hear maybe to hear it suggested that this process wasn't thoughtful, wasn't included, and wasn't democratic is just patently false. And so those are two separate thoughts, but I did want to acknowledge that city staff has really been very thoughtful about community engagement and made available through various listening sessions. There was a huge session at the library. This isn't a process. This is not something that has been done in a dark room with no input. So just to make sure that that's clearly stated. Thank you.
Thank you. John Mirsky.
Thanks. I know I've spoken a lot, but just one other thing that I want people to also consider. This is building off the comment of Councilmember Cornell. I think we all have heard that Washtenaw County is the 8th most economically segregated county in the country. And there's one thing that's not taken into consideration, in that, we talk about affordable housing. Affordable housing is the cost of the housing, your mortgage or your rent. It's the utilities. It's also your housing is going to drive your transportation costs. But the other thing that's never considered when we talk about this, in terms of what we're doing and what we're imposing on others, the 80,000 people plus that commute into Ann Arbor every day, there's an opportunity cost, a huge opportunity cost for time lost in transit. And so when we force those people to live outside the city of Ann Arbor and we don't give them an opportunity to live here, we're imposing not only higher transportation costs, but we're imposing the opportunity costs of time lost in transit. And a lot of these people are already on the edge. They probably have families, many of them. They want to have time with their kids. And when we put them in the car for 45 minutes or, in each direction, it obviously ranges. I'm on the board of 2 housing nonprofits, and we had students interview people that come to University of Michigan parking lots and get there hours ahead of time. And and we talk to them, and there are people that come and try to get a parking place, sleep in their car, and then walk to work because they can't, I don't need to get into details. I think you get a sense of what I'm saying is that by not doing the kinds of things that I think need to be done in terms of housing and providing housing and opportunities for these people, we're also imposing not only economic hardship, we're imposing other kinds of hardships on those families. And I just want all of us to think about all that.
Worldwide
Thanks,
problem
Steve.
in cities. Worldwide problem. Very tough. Very tough.
Not in all cities. And there are cities that do this very, very well. They do a lot of things, obviously, to solve it. But look at Vienna and look at affordable and public housing in Vienna and other cities in Europe. But yeah, it is. I mean, every big city that's a desirable place to live is a problem because they're expensive.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. I feel like we've gotten a lot of really good feedback on this, and I appreciate everyone's comments. members of the biodiversity group that are here. Thank you for contributing as to what we've written so far, and also to the discussion, and everyone else. So I feel like this might be a good time to transition to our next topic. Thank you all.
Okay, thanks, Rita. You did a great job. Just a clear question, because maybe I should know this, but do we need to have a vote since it's a first reading? Does anybody know?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you. Next topic is discussion of combination of the merger of the Environmental and Energy Commission to create a sustainability commission. And Aaron, I don't know if you have anything you want to start with that to talk about.
Sure, yeah. I think I'll let Councilmember Cornell can introduce the topic.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly. So this should not come as a surprise to anyone that these discussions have been going on for some time about creating a joint commission that could work in concert with OSI to advance our AT0 goals and for us to be more effective in reaching those goals. I think my colleague Councilmember Briggs did a really good job at Energy Commission explaining it, but the city has changed, the city structure has changed, city staff has changed, especially with OSI, being such an influential part of how the city conducts business. That none of that existed when these commissions were created and envisioned and their missions were set. And so the idea is really to create a sustainability commission that would be a merger of the two, energy and environment, and would focus on a work plan that would come through OSI, kind of stating these are the 4 goals that we have where participation from a commission would be really, really helpful in advancing and accelerating that work. And so versus kind of OSI doing its thing, energy doing its thing, environmental doing its thing, bringing everybody together to work in concert, because it just makes more sense, right? We're just going to be able to move a lot faster, in my opinion. And being able to tap into the unique expertise within each group and have that collaboration between the groups, I think is definitely great too. So where it stands right now is just kind of having these discussions and getting input on it. But that is the core idea of it and sort of the impetus for it. And Councilmember Malik, I don't know if you have anything to add, but because I know you were part of that discussion from Energy. So if there's something, I watched most of that meeting to get the gist of it, but if there's anything that I'm missing, please fill in.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. The kind of main thrust behind this would be to kind of realign and refocus, if you will. And we had a really good discussion at Energy Commission a few weeks ago discussing this. And Councilmember Cornell is right. This is kind of the discussion stage to see if this really does in fact make sense. I know Commissioner Mirsky, you had some really good comments at Energy Commission in that discussion. And Chair Curtis, I know you probably have some things to say on it too, so I'm happy to pitch it to whomever would like to chime in. Thanks.
And I can add a little more about the logistics too. So I would also add, it'll be a combination of OSI and public services, since there is so much overlap with environmental and energy issues in both of those departments. And so the vision as it stands is coming up with kind of a staff-led work plan that would focus on 3 or 4 high priority items that could come from OSI or from public services. And then we would kind of continue with the current structure we have now, where there are work groups that are, the technical work would happen in the work groups. And then the work groups would come back to the larger group for broader discussion. But the work groups would be the ones to really drill down into the issues. So we are, staff and council are working on updating the bylaws. If if discussions go well, we will start updating the bylaws. And we would have kind of that ready around May, and then potentially take a break, or that the bylaws and the ordinance / resolution would be ready by May for council to discuss, and then June would probably be a kind of recalibration month, and then potentially the Sustainability Commission would kick off in July, sort of timeline. So yes, we can open it up to questions and discussion. Thank you.
So I'll start. For the first meeting, is it safe to assume we would know what those high priority topics would be at that point in time? Or when do you think we would know what those topics are going to be?
Good question. I think that would be the goal, yes, to have those prepared by then.
And would it make sense for that first meeting, since we're going to have a lot of people who don't know each other, to have as an in-person working group meeting and then maybe have staff discuss those so we can figure out where people want to fit into those priority topics?
I think that could be considered for sure. Yeah.
In person would be good.
Commissioner Marson?
Thanks. I wanted to state my support for this, the idea of aligning a sustainability commission that kind of works better with the current city structure, city administration. But I had a couple of recommendations as you're working on the bylaws. And these are based on my experience with Parks Advisory Commission, where I'm currently the chair. I think, first of all, I consider that the staff liaison to a sustainability commission actually, be the director of the Office of Sustainability. So have Dr. Stoltz be the primary point person. My experience in PAC, that we work directly with the director of our Parks Department, and there are a lot of benefits to that in terms of having a better sense of what the needs are within the department. That's the person who's going to have the most holistic view of the department. And so they're able to really direct our work. And they're also able to get things done when we need things done. So they've got the connections with the city manager, with legal and that sort of thing. So and the city council. And so I think that's one recommendation I would have. And then the second one is, I think we should consider term limits for commissioners. I know there's many on the Environmental Commission who've been here a long time, and you guys are great. I value the insights that you have and your history with the city, your passion for the environment. But that said, again, this is based on my experience with PAC. I think when we have new faces, new folks regularly cycling onto the commission, that it provides for dynamic, fresh approaches to issues. It encourages more collaboration, I feel like, between the commissioners, so that valuable information isn't siloed. It helps, with the handoff of information as people are rolling off. I think it allows us to share what we've learned from working on these commissions with other organizations that we go to when our term is over, and it frees up time, and we go serve on boards at other places with other nonprofits, or continue work on other commissions within the city. It allows us to kind of share that information. And then I think it encourages us to kind of, if we've got projects that are important to the city and the Sustainability Commission, the Office of Sustainability agrees with that, kind of encourages us to move those projects along and tie them up, wrap them up as we're rolling off. So yeah, those would be my two main recommendations, but thank you.
Commissioner Graham?
Yes, and I've been here a while. Sometimes there's some value in deep history. One great idea that could be accomplished by combining commissions is that we could finally amend the 820 plan to include biodiversity plan. It's the other half of the coin, in my view, about climate mitigation. Most of our resolution tonight was talking about the reasons for that. I know we, the Environmental Commission, asked how we might amend the 820 plan to include this a couple of years ago, and we didn't get an answer. Maybe if we're all together, we can get an answer and move ahead with it.
Commissioner Mitchell?
Thanks. I agree with what Chris just said about that thought. And also, I just want to ask if the priorities under consideration will be shared with the two commissions so that we could actually have some input in moving forward with particular priorities, as opposed to just necessarily having them assigned, or at least it just would be good to be involved in that discussion.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot to work out there. I think we're certainly open to feedback. I think we need to kind of land on the amount of collaboration on the work plan, just to ensure alignment. But yes, we're certainly open to suggestions, and we need to, I guess it's still a question of how the process of the work plan will work. But yes, to be determined. Yeah, thank you for that feedback.
Commissioner Mursky?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to share some comments that I shared at the Energy Commission meeting and a few new ones. First of all, I'm absolutely positively in favor of a discussion of how we make the Energy and Environmental Commissions more efficient and more effective. My personal opinion is that they have not been recently, so I'm all for that. Second, my sense is this is a fait accompli, and I think actions speak louder than words. The Energy Commission should have 15 members. We have not replaced a commissioner since 2023 in the summer. So that's one example of that. There's other examples, and I don't need to go into them, but if it is a fait accompli, then we should figure out how we do make the commissions as efficient and effective as they possibly can be. The statement that this is a realignment with city staff, I frankly take exception to that. OSI is responsible for basically climate and energy. It's not responsible for solid waste. It's not responsible for air quality. It's not responsible for water quality. It's not responsible for natural features. I've been around for a while. I'm not quite like Chris, but I happen to be have a role in the office of the city administrator that's since been eliminated. But I helped draft Missy's job description. I was on the interview team. I was present when she was introduced to council, and she was introduced as with the title that she has, but it also included, and I looked it up earlier this week and I can share it with you. She was to have she had responsibility for solid waste. So if we're going to be efficient and effective, and if we're going to realign the commission, then let's realign it with reality and not with statements saying, well, this is a realignment so that it better fits with the city structure. It doesn't better fit with the city structure, certainly not as it is right now. So if that makes it more efficient and effective, then I'm all for it. As far as how the commission would work, my understanding is completely different than what has been explained here tonight. My understanding is that city council sets policy. That's given to the city administrator and city staff, and they execute on that policy. They are provided with the overall objectives they're provided with goals like A20 goals or affordable housing goals. You can go on down the list. And then it's, and the way that city council is informed on policy issues from the citizenry up, from the residents up, is that the councils are there to develop proposals and give input to city council on what needs to be done so that there are the proper objectives set, the proper metrics and targets that are set, as well as how to best achieve those with policies. And what I heard earlier is that city staff and city council will get together and tell the commission, the new commission, these are the things that we think you need to work on. I think that has to be a two-way street. And if this restructuring is a one-way street, then I think you've really taken away a critical element of, a critical role of boards and commissions. Boards and commissions need to be the route to provide input to city council. And I'll give you a specific example that I was going to mention earlier, but I think maybe it fits better here. When I think everybody is aware that the city is looking at various utility options. This SEU is obviously one of them that's now approved. The other is this proposal that's been put forth by Ann Arbor for Public Power, that there should be a municipal city utility, that the city should condemn DTE's assets and buy them out. There was a phase 1 study that was authorized by the city that was brought to the Energy Commission. It was debated over 3 meetings. A resolution was passed, and city council then passed a budget amendment to spend $700 for that phase 1 study. The way the last discussion went over a phase 2 study for $1.7 million, probably the most important budget policy related activity that the Energy Commission could have considered, that went directly from city staff to city council. It went to 1 meeting. City staff didn't say, oh, this is something that maybe the Energy Commission should weigh in on, and we should be getting public comment in Energy Commission meetings. That went then a second time to city council, and city council voted on it. So what I see is a series of actions that, like I said, speak louder than words. So what I would like to see is, if this is indeed, as I believe it is, a fait accompli, then let's really talk about how we make the commissions more effective. We take into consideration what Ann said about term limits. We talk about the city structure. We talk about how do we have effective working groups where people are really dedicated to spending time in working groups and actually have things develop there and then percolate up. That has not worked on the Energy Commission. We used to have working groups. The working groups don't exist right now. And that's partly probably a function of the fact that the number of commissioners have been reduced, and the fact that a number of the commissioners, frankly, don't have the time to do anything more than come to commission meetings. These are the kinds of things that we really need to grapple with, and we need to be honest with each other about what we want to accomplish about this. And let me just say one more thing. I want all of us to think about, of all the city's major environmental and energy related goals, what outcomes. I'm not talking about actions. I'm not talking about efforts. I'm not talking about accomplishments. I'm talking about outcomes. What outcomes have we had that really align with our goals? Our diversion rate is virtually the same. I think in terms of clean water, there are definitely some great outcomes, PFAS and a bunch of other things. But even if you look at greenhouse gas reductions, we are reducing greenhouse gas reductions at a rate where we will reach net zero. This is the average of net greenhouse gas reductions from 2015 to 2023. If you take that same rate, by the way, we have the rate going back to 2000, and it's a little bit lower, so we are starting to accelerate the activities, but we will reach net zero in 2070. If we want to reach it in 2030, it needs to be 7.5 times faster. If we want to reach it by 2040, it needs to be 3 times faster. So we have to do things certainly that are more efficient and more effective. There's a lot of things going on, but there's also a lot of headwinds from Washington. And I think we need to think of all of this in context and think of what are we going to do to really make the commissions more efficient and more effective and serve not just council and staff, but serve the residents of the city of Ann Arbor better so that we achieve outcomes, really outcomes for them. That's what we're here to do. Thank you.
So I've got a couple of comments regarding term limits. Since we will have working groups, you don't have to be a commissioner to be on a working group. So that's a way for people, if they term out, if they still want to be involved, they can stay on the working groups and still be effective there, and then get back on the commission the next time there's an opening. So there are opportunities there with term limits to work with working groups. The second is really a question. If assuming no one wants to drop off of either commission, when we merge them, it's going to be a relatively large number of people on the commission. Is there a concern about the size of the commission?
I think at this point, it will be a slightly larger commission. But as somebody was talking about, the size of the Energy Commission is quite low. And I forget at last count what the combined number of commissioners, and I know we have a couple people that will be terming out in the Environmental Commission. Our 2 youth members will not be returning. So I think the total number is, I want to say, around 18. So it's not crazy, especially because we have the working group structure that can be like where the actual work is getting done in the smaller groups, and the larger group when we all get together is just kind of a general discussion. So for me personally, I'm not concerned with the size, and that at first, and then it will kind of, as people will kind of naturally drop. And I forget where we landed on the total number at this point. But it won't be a huge group to start, just due to the kind of smaller size that we're both going into on both the environmental and energy side.
Is the plan to still have the youth commissioners going forward, or are they going to be?
That is the plan, yes.
All right. Vice Chair Brown?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Curtis. So I'm just going to take a minute because I have some historical memory. I've been with the commission, I think, as long as John Mursky has, but not as long as Chris Graham. But I'm going to speak about solid waste because in 2016, I believe it was, city staff told, I was just an audience member when this happened in front of the Environmental Commission, but city staff told the commission that the solid waste fund, which is financed by a special millage, that enjoyed generous support from the electorate here in Ann Arbor. City staff was saying that the solid waste fund was going to go to zero within 2 or 3 years. Under questioning, under some questioning, friendly questioning by the environmental commissioners, city staff was not able to adequately explain why the solid waste fund was going to disappear. Now, the commission was a forum for the community to investigate this matter and, in a way, take it off council's table. To see how to gather facts, to gather information, to have a public discussion and try to see where it would come. Ultimately, after months of discussions, it was clear that the city staff could not actually explain why it was going to go to zero. I think what was happening in the background is the city staff decided they did not want to have a MRF. They did not want to manage a MRF. So the outcome was that that principally happened through the commission is that the city council decided that, okay, we'll restart a MRF. So they set up RFPs. There were two organizations that submitted proposals. One was Amterra, a Canadian-based company, who proposed trucking, our recyclables and to a MRF that did not yet exist in Lansing, in East Lansing, and that it was unclear about what was going to happen with that. Their bid was higher than the other bid, which was submitted by Recycle Ann Arbor. Recycle Ann Arbor put together a proposal that did not, to restart the MRF, that did not involve any capital expenditures by the city. And now the Solid Waste Fund has $24 million in it. So I just want to throw this out as an example where the Environmental Commission performed an excellent public service as it existed, because it was able to take the discussion out of City Council. The community had a chance to provide input, and the situation was resolved in a manner satisfactory to city staff and to council and to the electorate here in Ann Arbor. So I just hope that whatever changes are envisioned, that they do not really cut the legs out of this kind of public forum that exists to resolve issues such as this. Well, that's all I want to say on this topic.
Thanks, Steve. Commissioner Nedrich?
Hi, I just wanted to very quickly express my support of combining. I have expressed that I wanted the Environmental Commission to focus more on A20, and so I feel like this is a good opportunity to kind of share and collaborate more and understand where the city is going with that. And I also have expressed that I wanted more input from city staff on what we should be prioritizing and working on. And it sounds like you guys heard us and you're going to be doing both of those. So thank you. I support.
I just want to say that I know John Mursky and I have had some conversations offline. I do a lot of volunteering for a lot of different groups around Ann Arbor. And one of the things I always think about is my time being used valuably? Am I making a difference? And after, almost 3 years on the Environmental Commission, it was not ranking very high as far as that. So I'm really looking forward to the merged Commission of Sustainability and the new direction we're going with the working groups, the way they're being set up. I'm hoping we have some opportunities to really make a positive change. So that's where I stand on it. Anybody else? So our next topic, we're probably going to go a little bit over, but Steve, we want to talk about the discussion on solid waste education. I don't know if we can make that a quick one and then move on, or maybe do more next month. What would you like to do?
Yeah, this came out of discussions in the circular economy working group. So please, Olivia, Aaron, and John and Brooks, please add to whatever I'm just going to put out here. And that is two things. First of all, we're in the middle or at the beginning, it's hard to tell which of a process where solid waste management is regionalizing, to better capture economies of scale that may exist. Now, what that means is that first of all, there was an organization created called WRMA, WRMMA, to which the city has subscribed. They are this is a government institution which is designed to help facilitate regionalization. Now the second thing is that of course anybody who's volunteered, as I have, with city staff on booths where you're talking about recycling, like what's recyclable and what isn't, it's very confusing to people that show up at your booth because they all live in different areas of the county and the rules are different, And so there's some sort of harmonization that should occur. Now, the way the business works, I was formerly on the board of directors of a recycling company in North Carolina. So I have some experience on the other end of that. And it's the MRF, it's whoever's managing the recycling and the composting who really are best aware of what their end markets are. What's the marketability of the diversion, of the things we're diverting from the landfill? What's the marketability of all the recyclables and the compost? And so, in a sense, they're the ones who really know best about what the rules should be, because they're the ones that have to sell the product that they're processing. So, so there needs to be some sort of harmonization, but it needs the MRFs themselves. The contractors who run the MRFs have to be a central part of that because they're the intermediaries in the whole value chain. And so that's highlighted the need for more, more education, more funding. Now, I'll just say that that within the recycling community, there's the Michigan Recycling Coalition. There's various organizations nationwide that I have participated with from time to time, including MRC. And there's a general consensus that basically a bottom level of funding for education is basically $10 per household. So if you count, the 2020 census, Ann Arbor has 26,000 households. But when you start adding, apartments as individual households, condominiums, it's closer to 50,000. So what that means is that there should be, to really attain any kind of goals on waste reduction and diversion, the city should be spending about $500,000 a year. Now the question is, the way the RFPs have been drafted, it's not clear what the goals are, first of all, for the education. What are the metrics we're going to use to tell whether an education campaign is successful or not? So so my experience with various organizations reinforces what I'd heard as a young person, that it really takes 3 to 5 years to evaluate the success of any plan, especially something around changing cultural habits. We don't want to wait 7 generations for everything to get right, but 3 to 5 years is a reasonable goal to set for yourself. But we don't have a real stable kind of fund like the solid waste fund is. So one of the things that one of the ideas that several of us have been discussing is just that maybe we should earmark maybe who knows what the amount is, but it's hopefully it could be up to 500,000 just to cover the city. Maybe we could earmark some of the funds that are within the solid waste fund to provide an annual fund for education that staff and council can evaluate, the success of various strategies and issue RFPs and all that. But this would provide a stable funding source for education to accommodate, the regionalization and all the confusion that's going to cause, and also provide a stable source of funding for educating the residents of Ann Arbor in compost and improving the value of the compost and the recyclables. So did I miss anything or?
I don't think so. So next are report outs from the work groups. So biodiversity, we had a meeting March 10th. We discussed the merger of the commissions and we discussed the resolution, and then Google cut us off after an hour. So that was all we talked about. Circular economy, Steve, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to report on circular economy.
Let's see. Yeah, Sarah Mason was present. You know, she's one of the staff people that we're talking with, that's part of the circular economy group. She was mentioning that city staff prefers reusable containers, actually, because of this confusion about whether a plastic container is recyclable or compostable. Because everybody, everybody here probably knows that back in the beginning of 2023, there was a problem with our composting contractor, We Care, Denali, because these BLA approved, containers, plastic cups that are made out of like polylactic acid and other that are sourced from biological chemicals, that they are not really compostable. With the operation that they're using. So, there's the fact is that I've saved them in my garage and I just take them to the university because the university uses a different contractor that accepts BLA plastics. So, it's a very complicated area. But Sarah did mention that because it's so complicated and it's probably not going to, and the market isn't going to resolve clearly for a number of years, then the city staff is currently thinking that that expanding the reusable program in some way may be the best. It's beginning to look like that's the best option. And that was about it. It's new. Yeah. Have I missed anything, Olivia? Okay.
Water quality, Sarah?
Hi. Yeah, we had a water quality meeting on February 21st, which I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't think you got an update on that. And then we also had a chloride subgroup meeting on March 3rd. And we actually have our next water quality work group meeting tomorrow. So we've been busy. The chloride subgroup has been very active. Shout out to Kelly McCabe from Huron River Watershed Council. She's been amazing getting us a bunch of data on fluoride, surface water quality. And we've kind of been able to, through her data crunching, kind of come up with a more prioritized plan of focusing on our creeks that are impaired for fluoride in the city. So that's Mallett's Creek, Swift Creek, and Miller's Creek. So we're taking a more targeted view on those and looking more at what we can do to specifically help those the specific creeks. I'm tentatively thinking of a field visit to maybe tag team with HRWC as they go out to see these creeks. We've been looking at some technology like chloride strips to get more detailed understandings of where the chloride's coming from. And then we're also looking into Minnesota has some really great salt programs called their Smart Salt program, where they actually have education for applicators and the public. So we're going to look at that and see if it's feasible to implement a similar type of program here. We're hoping to have a presentation on our work available for this group, probably, I would say, in like May or June. So we might have a special presentation to give you guys a more detailed update. And we're hoping to also meet with Public Works and talk about all the efforts they've done to reduce salting through their work. We're also still kind of working on the 1,4-dioxane MS4 issue. So we have a few feelers out on that. So we haven't dropped that yet, but I think that's it. Steve, am I missing anything?
Oh, just one thing, and that was with the Mid-Huron Partners, with the Huron River Watershed Council, Mid-Huron Partners meeting that was held on February 27th. It was noted that the scoring for rain gardens is a little wacko. Like you get a 4-point credit or a rain garden, no matter how the size, gets a 4-point credit, while the entire Mary Doyle Park Basin project only gets 7 points. So there was a discussion about the fact that that needs to be revisited and actually follow the metrics about stormwater retention far better than it currently is. So we're going to discuss that in the water quality team.
Okay,
Working
thanks.
group.
Sarah, was there anything on stormwater also on that work group?
No, so we're kind of on pause for that. We're focusing right now on chlorides, and then I think in the summer we're going to pick up on the stormwater stuff. So
Okay,
it's like juggling priorities right now.
sure. Energy, Commissioner Murski?
Yes, we discussed two topics, one of which was already mentioned. We discussed the combination of the two commissions into a sustainability commission. I don't think anything further needs to be said about that. The other thing that we discussed is the idea of using zoning to levy a carbon fee on new natural gas developments, as well as the replacement of major natural gas appliances in buildings over 20,000 square feet. That effectively was shot down because of legality concerns. But I'd like to point out to our two council members that still leaves a major problem in that the A20 plan assumed that starting in 2022, all new buildings in Ann Arbor would be all electric. And we also have obviously a problem with major buildings in their systems, large boiler systems and things like that. Those are in most cases, still being replaced with natural gas. And the residential systems are going to be there for 15 to 20 years. And commercial systems, in many cases, when you're talking about the commercial boilers, they're going to be still emitting greenhouse gases for up to 50 years. So we need to do something. And I know that in one case, including recently, there was, at least as I understand it, there was a 30% height bonus that was given. And that's okay. But when we're talking about new heights in the comprehensive plan, and there's pushback against some of the higher heights in residential neighborhoods, if it goes up to 48 feet, and then you add a 30% bonus for all electric construction, or maybe for affordable housing, then it's no longer 48 feet. So we have a problem that we need to solve. And just so that people understand, we have approved, since the A20 plan was implemented, we've approved over 30 buildings that are natural gas connected. I'm not just talking about for a backup generator. And the emissions of those buildings is going to wipe out essentially about 2/3 of 1 full year of decarbonization activities for everything else that we're doing. And that problem that we're going to continue to be confronted with, particularly in my view, in the sense that we have a Trump administration that's not going to be doing much in this way to advance all electric construction. So we have a dilemma that we somehow need to figure out how we're going to address. And that hopefully will be something that a new sustainability committee can come up with. So we talked about this resolution. It was shot down, but basically the topic remained as an open topic for further considerations, although I don't know exactly what options we have available to us. So that's all from the Energy Commission.
Parks, Commissioner Marson.
Hey, thanks. We've had two meetings actually since the last time the Environmental Commission met. So we had a natural area preservation update on, they recently did a new strategic plan, mostly reaffirming the goals that they've had all along. We had an update on the capital asset study that's being conducted. And suffice it to say that Parks has quite a large number of capital assets, most of them aging and quite pricey to repair and maintain. We voted to recommend that Ann Arbor be designated a bird city of Michigan. And then we had an update on West Park and the planning that's going on with that. And those are the highlights.
Thanks. Do our council members have anything they want to add?
No,
I can
thank you.
just say really quick, on the city council agenda on Monday, so a few days ago, we did approve what I believe is the last step to build a new Fire Station 4, which will be just simply replacing the old Fire Station 4. This is at Platt and Huron Parkway, but of note for this group, it will be net zero. And we believe this will be the first net zero fire station in the state. So more to come on that as it's built, and hopefully, you know, things like tours and stuff like that will be available once it's complete. But that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Nothing else from chair. Report out from staff.
Yeah, I had an update about the next sustainability forum series is next week at the library on circular economy. So check that out from 6 to 7:30 p.m. One other update from OSI and my notes are the energy rebates available. So it's an expansion of the home energy rebate program to hopefully make it easier for residents to get hooked up with that. And then I have the budget update under public services, but it's clearly for the entire city. But so our budget process is underway for fiscal year 26-27. Council will have a work session, I believe, on Monday. And then in April, the city administrator will have his kind of recommended fiscal year 2026 budget. And then in May, council will then adopt the budget on May 19th. And that's all the updates for me. Thanks.
Vice Chair Brown, you have a question?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if, I'm sorry, Aaron, I dropped my attention, but I just wanted to mention that there's an 820 Sustainability Forum as part of the, on March 27th at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. in the downtown library, 4th floor meeting room. It's
Yep.
going to include a lot of, I didn't catch whether you'd mentioned that or not.
Oh, I did. Yep. But I was very brief. So thanks for the underscore.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Commissioner Graham?
Could we by chance see a copy of the Natural Race Program strategic plan if it's now public? We all had a lot of discussion with them on multiple channels about this plan, and there are a lot of details that I'm sure we'd all like to see.
Yeah, sure. I can round that up for you.
Thank you.
So our next meeting is on April 24th, and now we're at our second public comment. This is an opportunity for people to speak up to 3 minutes. Please call 888-788-0099. Enter meeting ID 954-3473-9065. To raise your hand, press 9. To unmute, press *6. City staff will select callers who have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of their phone number. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. There may be a delay up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Aaron, do we have a caller? Or any callers still?
I don't see any raised hands on the caller. So I think we're good. Oh,
Okay.
yes. Sorry. Yes, we do.
Okay.
Caller 464, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I just always need to be reassured because I'm not on Zoom. I just dialed in. I'm just on audio only. So my name is Linda Brower. I spoke earlier in this meeting, and I kind of surprised myself by just listening to the entire meeting. And I wanted to just respond to things that some of the commissioners said, and I don't know who said what because I didn't have the video and I don't know voices. So the commissioner who asked about West Park linking to the Allen Creek Greenway, or what is now known as the tree line, you know, you'd have to condemn a couple of homes on 3rd Street and tear them down to allow that to happen. So I don't think that's a good idea. But I wanted to mention that West Park is largely functioning as a wetland right now. Under it is a tributary that goes into the Allen's Creek. And the route of the Allen's Creek is what is supposedly going to be morphed into the tree line. And that goes into the Huron River. And the tree line itself is not going to be green infrastructure as it's envisioned now. I should mention I was a Parks Advisory Commissioner as well, and I was chair for several years, and I also was on the Allen Creek Greenway Task Force. So I just want to not let this history be lost. Right now, the plan for the tree line is kind of a concrete, narrow path to the river. And the only way it's going to act is green infrastructure, which was the original vision. If the city owns parcels along it, which are in the Allen Creek floodplain, are not built upon and are remediated if there's any toxins and planted with, wetland native plants. Okay. The second thing I wanted to say in response to Commissioner Malik, yes, Commissioner, many cities incorporate protections for natural features in their comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is a land use plan. Natural features are part of the land, and you need to address how they're going to be used. So I think you can consult with the consultant that the city hired to develop the plan, because they should have, in addition to doing a lot of demographic trends within the city and real estate investigations and all that, they would have looked at what other cities are doing currently with their comprehensive plans. So they should have some examples of other communities that incorporated those protections. We did in the past. And then the third thing I wanted to say to Councilmember Cornell, my council member, I think you said that somebody misstated the fact that there wasn't robust participation in the meetings for the comprehensive plan. And, you know, I have only been watching it kind of from afar and reading about it. But I don't think it was fair that you basically said he lied, and you said it's patently untrue. And I need to tell you that you need to tune into the Planning Commission meeting last night, which I did after many months of not listening. I tuned in, and it was the largest public turnout at the Planning Commission I have ever seen in years. And all of those people were talking about the comprehensive plan and how they didn't realize what was in it. So there's plenty of people that didn't know about it. I just think it's important. It's important.
30 seconds left for public comment.
Okay. Thanks. My last 30 seconds, I just want to say, I think it was John Mursky who was saying things about, or somebody said, it's not a question of either or. Density is going to happen. That's the city has already committed to that. Nothing's going to change that. So the goal now is to see what we can preserve in terms of green infrastructure and natural features to counterbalance the density that we're all going to be living with, because that green infrastructure is necessary. It's just 3 more words. It's necessary just for the environmental health, and the environmental health affects physical and mental human health. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No other callers. Nope.
Okay. So is there a motion to adjourn? Or does anybody want to say anything else? I see one motion from Chris. Is there a second?
You Brooks. Good meeting.
Okay, I think we are adjourned for the day. Have a good night.
Right.
Thanks.